Welcome to the Republican Professor. We have with us a special guest today, Jonathan Schober. Thank you for being here, Jonathan.
It is a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Did I say your name right? Is it Jonathan? Is that how you say
It
it?
is Jonathan. Now,
Okay.
I go by John or Jonathan, but just don't call me late for dinner and we'll be okay.
Jonathan, you're a special guest. You interviewed me on your podcast several moons ago before. Seems like was it during all this crazy stuff or was it after that? I can't remember.
I mean, I think it might be pushing a year. So it was a great conversation and enjoyed it and happy to be on your podcast now. So this is fantastic.
It got a lot of views. I saw that and that was cool.
And what's funny is, I mean, this is what's funny as you're doing podcasts, I still get these notifications, right? Someone comes on and is like, great post or whatever. So it's amazing kind of the evergreen of these videos and these podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you write a book and you put it in the library and lo and behold, someone checks it out 50 years later.
That's right.
And they're still
or
reading
maybe
it.
Finds it at a used bookstore, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. Jonathan, you just ran for office and you're in the state of, let me guess, Arkansas?
It's hard. I know it's a tough
Arkansas.
Guess. I try to do that. I'll be in Kansas, but shockingly, no, I am in the great state of Texas and ran.
Oh, there you go. Awesome.
So for those of you that don't know what the Lone Star State is, that is the Lone Star State.
Yeah, there you go. So what office did you run for?
So the office was a state legislator, so state rep, basically covered about half the county. So Williamson County, which is just north. It's kind of a suburban area just north of Austin. So Austin is kind of in Travis County. For those of you that might not be aware, Travis County and Austin is basically, California East. I mean, it is crazy. It is liberal. It's the blue boil on the otherwise beautifully red state of Texas. So I was running for a district that was just north of Austin in Williamson County. Gotcha. Covered about half the county in terms of geography. So relatively small geography, which made it a lot easier to campaign. But in terms of population, about 200,000 people population.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of ground to cover. And it's a crazy place, as you said. What was your strategy going into it?
Well, the strategy was win, right? And apparently I did not do very good. No, I mean, really, there were kind of a couple of things that I really wanted. So just to provide a little context. Now, I'll kind of start with, bottom line up front. So I didn't win, but I did get these really cool, Schober for state representative.
That is cool.
Coffee mug. So for a contribution of $20, you too, even now, can have your very own Schober for state rep coffee mug.
Are you planning on running again?
Yeah, I probably will. So to answer your question, just the background. So this was the year across the country for redistricting. So what that is all the lines or political boundaries are redrawn every 10 years. So in my particular race, it had been kind of a Democrat district, got redrawn. So it was more of a Republican district in terms of numbers. The state rep that had been it was very much a hard liberal representative. Because of redistricting, he actually moved out of this district into another district, and I actually changed my residency and moved into district. So what that means is it was an open seat, so there was no incumbent. In all likelihood, the winner of the Republican primary will likely win the general election. So just for context, on the Democrat primary side, basically there was one candidate that will run on the Democrat. There were actually four of us on the Republican side. So it was an open seat, no incumbent. The four of us that ran Each of us were, none of us had held political office. Myself, I'm kind of a, professional father, citizen, legislator candidate named Patrick McGinnis, very similar. Both of us had about 20 years in the technology field. The two other candidates were a bit younger than us. Both of them had been staffers with state senators. So it was very interesting because no incumbent, open seat, and the main goal, and we'll go into some of the reasons, but in terms of the strategy, what I wanted is I wanted to make sure that if nothing else, I was the most substantive candidate. So it was extremely important to me that I used some of this technology, or I used videos. I had a lot of, I think relatively long form, substantive type campaign speeches. I'm sure that most people are aware of the political flyers that come in, and basically they all kind of look the same and sound the same. I'm the conservative Republican, vote for me. What I did and what I started doing, or what I started with, was I actually published a 12-page full color newspaper. And so in there were, of course, articles that I wrote, articles that one of our local school board districts wrote, a emergency management expert wrote. So I launched the campaign with that newsletter. I mailed it to all 15,000 voters, and that was something that was unique. It was certainly unique in the race, and as I've been in it, fairly unique. And we can kind of talk about just the importance of educating the voter. So my strategy was to educate, run a substantive campaign, and that was the strategy.
I'm all for education. That's an interesting idea to do a little newspaper. It's kind of old school. It's vintage.
It's vintage. And it was funny because, you go to all these events, right? And everyone's got their little card, and they're going from card, and they drop their little flyer on the card.
That's
and
right.
I'm walking around with this
Everybody's
newspaper.
got their Palm Pilot and their BlackBerry.
You got it. I'm walking with this newspaper, dropping newspapers
Oh, that's cool.
On the table. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Were there any pictures in your newspaper?
Oh yeah. It was somewhere around
It
here.
looked like a legit newspaper then.
No, it was like a legit 12-page full color newspaper print. I used, we have kind of a community impact that comes out, and it was basically printed the same deal. So it looked like a community impact magazine.
How did you get the people to write the articles? Did you pay them?
No, this was actually, very, very, I think, cool, because part of it is you want to ride on the coattails of other people. So one of the things that I did when I was thinking about running is I met with all the city council members and county commissioners. I basically reached out because there's four, one county and kind of four cities in the county. So I reached out to the mayor and the city council members, ended up meeting with probably about a half dozen of them. And, I'm John Schober, I'm thinking about running. And out of those conversations, connected with a couple of the local guys. And, they were very passionate about some issues, some of the growth that's going on. Williamson County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. We've got Samsung coming into the county. And so one of the city council member was very passionate about the growth and kind of the challenges of one of the small communities. And so I just asked him, I said, hey, would you mind writing an article about this? And he loved it. He's like, sure, I'll write it. And in Williamson County, we're kind of ground zero with some of the stuff that's going on with the school districts. We have the pornography in the schools and the critical race. We've had two parents that have been arrested because they spoke at a school board meeting. And one of the good guys, school board members, Danielle Weston, she had written a Facebook post kind of talking about, what good governance in a school district would look like. So I reached out to her and just said, hey, do you mind if I use this Facebook post and republish it? And so, it kind of served a twofold purpose. It allowed me to introduce myself to some other people. It allowed me to give other people a platform. I hate the me, vote for me, and I didn't want to do that. And so that's how I got, like I said, I think altogether I had probably about 6 authors that wrote 6 different articles for the newsletter.
Oh, the emergency management thing you mentioned, what was that about? Was that about the energy issue you guys had last year? The
Exactly.
freeze?
The freeze. So I had a very good friend of mine that's a retired Army colonel, and he was in charge of, I think it's FEMA Region 6. I can't remember. Basically covers Texas, Arkansas, maybe Louisiana. And so he was in charge of disaster recovery and emergency response for the state of Texas when he was on active duty.
Oh.
And so what we did is we wrote an article because one of the major issues was the freeze. And
what's your friend's name? The Army Colonel?
Colonel Scott McLeod.
McLeod. Okay.
McLeod, and great guy. And he, so the failure from the energy is, why didn't we have the oversight? Why were they not prepared for this kind of events? And so that's really what he spoke to is, how do you prepare a very large infrastructure for disasters? And that was the context of the article. It was a fascinating article. I'll send, I'll send a link to the PDF. I'll send a link to the PDF.
We will post that.
Publish that.
Yeah, we'll post that on the episode.
Cool.
So what did you hope to accomplish if you got elected? That's a different question, because once you're in there, you have 2 years? Is that right?
It's a 2-year term.
2 years. Okay. Is it part-time or full-time?
Very much part-time. So in Texas, the legislature meets for 120 days. I think it's 120 days every other year. So this is literally, this is about as part-time as you get.
It's like working at King Soopers, basically, in Denver.
Exactly.
As a 16-year-old, basically.
So you have 2-year term. Basically, you get one session, so one shot in the session, and then you run for re-election.
That's cool. So let's review the powers of the 2-year state representative again. If you get voted in there, you can tell pretty much everybody what to do. And you have a Secret Service detail and constant death threats, probably, right? And basically you are
the jet
walking in.
Texas one that
you kind of you don't walk, you swagger in, and you obviously have your chew. And
of course
you're spitting.
Well, I do sunflowers. I do sunflowers.
Okay. Sunflowers, and you got your Nalgene bottle. Obviously, you're spitting it into that.
Right.
Because of the environment, and then you basically
and don't forget the stogie. I've got the big stogie with about a 3-inch ash on it.
There you go. And you're obviously carrying some kind of weapon.
Of course, several.
And and you say, this is how it's going to work now.
Yeah.
And so you got Marcy's my administrative assistant. If you go through her, I'll be out back having a steak.
Right. Playing golf.
Yeah, playing golf. So yeah, what did you hope to accomplish in 2 years? Or 120 days, I guess. I'm not sure how to phrase the question.
Well, so a couple of things. So I was very much an anti-establishment candidate. So, just to kind of go into what motivated me to run, my campaign theme was kind of, freedom, security, and prosperity. And what I meant, or the way that I kind of framed that up, is here in Texas, we had a Republican governor that shut down the state.
Yep.
My daughter, a small business owner, she owned a franchise, Camp Gladiator, which is sort of a outdoor fitness camp. And so overnight, she shut down, out of business. I'm
I'm
22
so sorry.
years old.
I'm
Okay.
so sorry to hear that.
Um,
I think I know your daughter. I might be no I might know the person you're talking about.
probably so. We'll
I
talk
think
about having her on the show.
I've talked to her briefly. Yeah.
Mhm. So literally, literally impacted from the shutdown. Again, Republican governor, we had a hairstylist that defied his order and ran her business. She gets thrown in jail. So, you know, our freedom was very much, under assault or threatened. The second thing was security. We've got a major issue with the border. We've got hundreds of thousands of illegals that are coming through. The rapes, the sex trade, the human trafficking. I mean, it's a big deal, and we have a governor.
Who's getting raped? What's the rape
Well,
issue?
so the rape issue, you have a lot of the immigrants as they come through, right? These coyotes are
They're the ones getting
raping
raped.
and molesting
So
the
it's
migrants.
these vulnerable people that are trying to escape socialist Mexico.
You got it.
They're the ones getting vulnerable. Okay.
Yeah, they're the one getting involved.
How
And
do you effectively stop that? How do you, or at least decrease it? But obviously, love to stop it totally.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
how do you decrease it?
Well, and this was my campaign. First off, you make a serious commitment. So we have a governor that says a lot of stuff and does very little. And so in
Yeah.
terms of what I think policy wise, I think that we had an opportunity to one, just declare this an invasion, okay, and actually activate our National Guard to defend our borders. What was interesting, this resource,
How would that
but
prevent the women from being raped, though?
well, if you stop the traffic, right? So if you create the situation to where they're not moving, right? You create you change the ground game.
They don't put
They,
themselves in that situation where they're especially vulnerable to
that
these nefarious people that's their business to smuggle people in. Is that what you're saying?
that's exactly right, right?
Okay.
If they, you lock up the opportunity, okay, you don't have these vulnerable people coming over here.
Right.
That risk is
So it wouldn't happen right
mitigated.
away, but eventually it would. You're saying pretty quickly it would, the word would get out that you can't do that through
The
Texas.
the world would get out, and just to cut to the chase is this is money. I mean, the cartel makes millions of dollars trafficking people, and if you shut the traffic down, okay, word gets out real fast that there's no money to be made here in Texas. And I think military. You talk about foreign policy, which is to some extent you have this even with this, which is diplomacy, information, military and economic. Even on a state level, we could deploy economic powers to sort of influence
Right.
Mexico, even as
Okay.
a state, right? So
So
those
that
are
would be
those are some things.
that would be what you as a state rep would be, because obviously a state rep doesn't have the power over the National Guard, right? And
Right,
I
right.
don't think you
So
have. Do you have as a state rep? Do you, if you could convince enough people in the legislature, do you have any power over how those National Guard get deployed? Isn't
so
that
it,
totally
it
the discretion of the governor?
Right. So, in very much, this is a governor has the power. So in practical terms, the state rep, what can I do? I can, authorize money, support the governor. I was also,
Gotcha.
while I was running my own campaign, I was also campaigning for and running on Lieutenant Colonel Allen West's campaign. So he was challenging our current governor. So, the perfect plan was
Okay.
for Colonel West to become Governor West, and then I would be in the legislature to support him. That was the perfect world.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. I thought you were you're a Republican, right?
I am a Republican.
Well,
Yes,
isn't Colonel West black?
I know it's a, what,
Hold on a
come
second. I thought you were,
come to think of it, come to
aren't you
think
a
of it,
racist though?
he is in fact black. Yes.
Okay,
And
I thought you
I
were a
hadn't really,
racist.
I
All
hadn't
right,
thought
hold on a
about
sec.
that.
Hold on.
Uh,
I had in my notes that you were a racist. Hold on a sec.
Yeah. Kind of make sure, John is a racist. I'm a sexist also, make sure we put that down.
Sometimes I wonder if they mean the sexiest. And I'm like, wait, hold on a sec. I don't think so. Have you seen Brad
Well,
Pitt? Have you
yeah,
seen Brad Pitt? I had
I'm
this
watching this
discussion.
Johnny Depp trial, and
Oh,
maybe
you're the one watching it. I haven't seen it. What's that Johnny Depp thing all about? I mean,
it is a
I don't have a
complete soap
TV, so
opera.
oh,
It's a
okay.
soap opera. It's
What
it's a train wreck that I will fully
is that
admit
his wife?
I
That
am sucked into it.
is that his wife that's complaining?
It's his ex-wife.
Oh,
Yes.
it's his
So, and
ex-wife. Okay.
I can see why she's an ex, by the way.
Okay. She's crazy.
She's crazy.
Well, it doesn't look like he has all his screws together too. He's got a screw
Yeah,
loose somewhere.
there is it's a train wreck. It is an entertaining train wreck.
Yeah. Is that on regular television or what is that on?
Oh my gosh,
YouTube?
it comes up on my Facebook feed, and I
Oh,
totally
okay.
get sucked into it. I mean, I
That's
will
hilarious.
I will admit I get sucked into it when they post it, and blow
So
through an hour of my day.
what was Colonel West running on? I didn't I'm not in Texas, so I'm not following it. I'm in California.
So,
All I can do is sit back here and fantasize about what it would be like
I mean,
if we had people like West out here. But what
Colonel
what was he
West
all
was
about?
was running secure the border. Here we have a major issue with property taxes, just out of control property taxes.
Yeah, I've heard.
And
What's the
uh,
solution to that though? I mean, should you have an income tax then?
well, right. So this is, I think I think it's Thomas Sowell that says, if you're taxing fairly, it doesn't matter how you tax, it'll be
Yeah,
okay. If you're
yeah,
taxing too much, it doesn't matter how you tax, it'll be bad. But I
right.
do think that fundamentally, um, I don't like, of all the different ways you can tax, I think income tax is the worst. Property tax is, not much better. So I mean, I am an advocate of a sales tax, and we do have a sales tax here in Texas. So I think there's two things. I think one would be moving to the sales tax, but the real egregious thing in Texas is, all these politicians are like, well, we have a cap on the tax rate. It can only go up 0.5% or whatever it is. And so these politicians, they come in and they say, we haven't raised your taxes. Look, there's a cap on what we can raise that tax rate. Notice I'm saying that tax rate. But over on the other side of the equation, the value, the property value, there's no limit on that. So basically, this is what irritates me the most, is these guys, legitimately or not, the property value goes up, and the politicians basically get a free tax increase every time the property value goes up. And so,
Yeah.
my
So nobody's accountable except for the market,
exactly.
which
And
it is interesting that the market would react that way given the tax setup. It just seems like the market should react a little differently, because well, I don't know how it works exactly, but I just know that the thought of retiring in Texas is a little bit less appealing to me, because if you have an income tax, right, and that's how you're taxed primarily,
mhm,
then older folks on a fixed income that's predictable for them, right?
correct,
Which is
correct,
what you want in retirement. You want to have predictable security, stuff like that.
right.
You're not a nimble, kid anymore. You can't just go get a job necessarily. Well, your prized possession as you retire is the roof over your head.
Yes.
And so if the government is just saying basically, hey, I'm renting this land out to you, I really own the land. You think you own the land?
Yeah.
No, you don't own the land. I own the
I
land.
own it, and
I'm
I
the
can
government.
jack up your rent anytime I
And this
want.
is, and so yeah, I'm just this is a lease that you have,
Mhm.
and it's an interesting kind of lease because unlike the lease that a typical landlord lessee has, they can't just take all your assets, right?
Mhm.
They can't just
Mhm.
acquire your assets,
Yep.
right? You know,
Right.
if you don't pay your rent, they evict you,
Yeah. That
right?
the worst they could
And
do is kick you out.
if you leave your stuff there, then there's a process by which they, auction that off or whatever. But that
Right.
you have to leave it there, right?
Right.
But this property tax thing is really kind of an interesting thing because you think it's private property, but it's really the government saying, um, no, you're just, you're passing through here and you owe me money for living there.
Yes.
And so I'm the boss, not you. That's
Mhm.
not your property, it's mine. And the rate will fluctuate. It's not set by a lease. And if you don't pay it, I now can take that property from you.
Yes.
Well, actually, you know, I have it anyway, kind of,
Right.
because I mean, why, if you can take it from me, then how,
Then I don't
I
have
don't
it.
understand. Yeah, it's odd because they feel like they can take the entire value of the property, not just what you owe them, which is
Mhm.
a small fraction of that, right?
Mhm.
It's it's
Mhm.
it's interesting. So if you're
It's
really
it's an
old,
egregious,
yeah, if
yeah,
you're
it's an
old,
egregious method.
if you're old and you owe, I don't know, $10,000 on back taxes or something,
Sure.
could they take the roof from you? Could they?
Absolutely. Now there are some, I don't want to go too far. There are some homestead exemptions. There are some rules, but in general principle, you are exactly right. I mean, people are losing their homes. That is a very real thing. Again, in this area, it's been a high growth. I mean, even my own house, it's almost tripled in value. So there's literally people, that may have bought a house for $50,000 and it can be worth $1 million
Yeah.
today, and they're
What's
retired and they're on a
what's the
fixed
what's
income.
the tax rate on that? Give us some real numbers so we get a sense of what you're
Oh,
talking about.
see, now you need the policy advisor part of my campaign staffer, right? I always kind of stay away from real numbers because I get in trouble
Can you
when I use
ballpark
real
it?
numbers.
You
We're
don't have
talking
to.
seven, eight. We're talking 7-8%.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
So wait, hold on. So you're talking like thousands of dollars, at least thousands of dollars a year, maybe even a month
Oh
in
yes. I mean,
taxes.
yes, and
Oh
property
wow.
taxes. So I mean, and here's the other thing. Again, you know,
And this is a Republican state.
this is a Republican state.
Uh,
And here's what's really funny. The left always talks about, protecting the little guy.
of
The
course, those
guy that gets
policies were
hurt,
probably put in place by Democrats. Probably.
exactly. And the
Yeah.
guy that gets hurt the worst is the guy who's renting, the guy who's an apartment renting, because here, the apartment complex has no homestead exemption. At least I get a little bit of a break on my value as a homestead, but that apartment complex, there's no homestead, so they are paying the full freight of the tax rate on that. And of course, what are they doing? They pass that on to the renters, who tend to be the lowest income people. So this is very much I think it's a regressive tax, right? Is that right? You can correct me, but the
Yeah.
people that are the poorest are paying a higher percentage of property taxes.
So if you were, in other words, it incentivizes having less land. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't know if I quite go too far as say incentivizes, but it sure makes it difficult to acquire land.
and it incentivizes having a crappier house, basically.
Yes,
I guess
without question.
somebody could say, well, that's the incentive in any place that there's property tax. I mean, because there's a percentage, there is some kind of incentive,
Right.
I guess. But like in California, it's very strange. Are you aware of California's property tax regime?
As I understand it, the value is basically set at purchase. And so that
Right.
valuation is there. And so, whatever it was assessed at, if they change the tax rate, they can raise the tax rate, but the value is set until
Yeah,
another transaction occurs and it's sold, and then it basically gets
that's right.
revaluated to the new owner.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's
With
actually what
the
I was advocating.
with the exception though of when you say transaction, if you include probate, if you include a living trust or something like that, if you include inheritance,
Mhm.
now this is what makes it interesting in California. The folks that have lived in California the longest and have held on to their property, I think it only goes, um, it doesn't go sideways. I believe it doesn't go from brother to sister. I don't
Okay.
think it goes to cousin, and it can't. I don't think it can go up. I can't go to your aunt or something like that.
Mhm.
But it's grandparent to grandchild or
Right.
parent to child. I
Mhm.
guess it could be great grandchild parent to great grandchild. I conceivably, I'm sure. But if there's a certain way it has to be, um,
Keep going.
there's a certain way it has to be. Oh, I can't see anymore.
I am here, so
Oh,
keep
okay.
the
You are
conversation
here.
going.
Great. There's a certain way that it has to be inherited. And if it's inherited that way, then the little rascal with his grandparents' bungalow in Venice Beach that was purchased, I don't know, in 1950
Right.
for $10,000, $11,000. That rascal now is paying some ridiculously low property tax, like
Yes.
hundreds of dollars a year for $2 million house.
Mhm.
Now, if they were to sell that, and the new buyer would now be paying, I don't even know, but it would be the tax alone on it would be um, much more than that person could afford even to rent.
Yeah.
Just the tax.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, it's a very it's an odd situation where
And
you're in Southern California and you're like, how did this person live here? I don't understand how they are still here. I know they don't do anything. They have that rinky dink job over there. How do they? The reason they have it is because they're living in their grandparents' house, which good for them. I mean, they passed. I mean,
right.
praise God, and
Right.
private property, all for it. But it's so odd to see people in the identical circumstance working the same weird barista job that is totally priced out of the market. There's no way, just on tax alone, they could afford that. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure why the economy is the way it is. I don't know why the prices are so high here in California. I don't know why there's such a demand. I mean, people keep saying it's the weather. I mean, the weather, I don't know. I feel like there's some other structural issue there that I don't quite have a handle on.
Well, I mean, clearly you are pretty. There's only so much dirt. Obviously, Silicon Valley, major draw to it. So I think there
Yeah,
is, and there's a lot of similarities, especially Central Texas as well with some of that. So,
mm,
I think I do think that the demand for that land is real. I mean, people want to be there. They want to be on it. It's funny. I mean, just from a public policy, you could make an argument that it is good public policy to keep that family, generationally in your state, right? And so you could actually say, yes, we are
sure.
intentionally doing this because of the public policy, and we want people to stay and get roots and live here forever. or if you don't like that, you could set up the policy to where, regardless of how, the property transfers the revaluation. So I think a case could be
I think
made.
Prop 13 was a Republican-led
Mhm.
effort. I think it was opposed by Jerry Brown, actually.
And Prop 13 was, you guys have like, propositions every, 6 months out there. So
Yeah,
what was Prop 13?
it's not healthy. Prop 13 is the famous thing. I think it was 1978. It's the thing we're talking about. It's
Got it.
what set that in place. It didn't exist before that. And I believe Jerry Brown was the governor at the time. Let me review. Pat Brown was governor for 2 terms. He ended his term 1967 when some guy named Ronald Reagan took over the governership. I've never.
Who
I'm
was
gonna
that?
look him up. Who's Ronald Reagan? But
Yeah,
and
he
then
was he was a
Ronald
Democrat, wasn't he?
he was eventually, but not at that time. He served 2 terms, and his term ended in 1975, I believe. Is that 8 years?
Well, he won in 80, and I don't remember how.
Well, I'm talking about governor.
Yeah. So I don't remember how long he was
He
out.
won in 67, and he won in 66, office 67. Then he won again in 1970 out in, well, that would have been 74, the next election. So he was out in 75. So then that's when Jerry Brown, the son of Pat Brown, was elected for his first term in 1974. And so he took office 1975. So during that time, so Jerry Brown was in office when Prop 13 took effect. I believe it was 1978. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just,
We're spitballing it. We're just guessing.
Well, property, it's just such an interesting philosophical question of who really owns the property.
Yeah.
And
what's the basis of
philosophically,
yeah, it is, it is the whole concept of property tax is very much a Marxist idea, right? Because fundamentally, the government owns it. And, I think even in Texas, even property taxes in Texas is relatively new. I think it was, early 1900s that we actually, brought property taxes into Texas. So it's a relatively new taxation model.
It's interesting. It's related to the issue that you brought up about the person you referenced. I don't know if you knew the person, but your own daughter had her business shut down. But the hairdresser, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, let me tell you a quick anecdote, a quick story. During the shutdown here in California, I was looking for a place to get my hair cut because I wasn't going to do it, and I waited a long time. Okay,
right.
I waited until it was really time.
You were a long-haired hippie freak, basically.
I was a freak. Well, I'm still a freak, but I found a person in La Habra, and I can tell you exactly where it was. It was on Imperial and Harbor. Mm-hmm. And there's a Walmart there, and there's a strip mall, and it's Bless Barber Shop. I think that's what it's called. The front part was totally blacked out, so you couldn't see inside.
Okay.
And there was just a phone number, and I called the phone number, and when the person answered, I could hear buzzing and people talking, right, and stuff like that. And I said,
Speakeasy.
Are you open for business? And he said, do you want to make an appointment? And I said, yes. And they said cash only. And they quoted me some outrageous number.
Right.
It was like more than I've ever contemplated paying for a haircut ever. Yeah. It was,
it's like almost as much as my wife pays for haircuts.
So women, okay, you don't understand, but we're not used to paying that. I'm used to paying very low. And my normal lady I go to, she's from South Vietnam, her words, South Vietnam. That's how old she is. She came here fleeing communism. Right. And she's always charged me the same rate. She recently raised it. But I've been going to her for almost 20 years now. And she charged me for the longest time $10.
Mhm.
And I'd give her a tip every time. Only recently has that changed. So,
Wow.
and it's just, she's just, we talk, and she's a sweet lady, and she owns 2 houses, by the way,
Mhm.
and drives a Lexus. So
It-
I'm not,
it-
it's not like she's always telling me, when are you going to buy a house? And I don't want to do her accent, because she's got a broken accent, very authentic. And I don't want to do it because it makes people think that I'm, someone will take this out of context and think that I'm making fun of her.
Right.
But anyway, so she was shut down. She obeyed the government.
Mhm.
Poor lady. And anyway, so so
So
I
was the other
checked.
place, did
I
you
made a
pass Nancy Pelosi when you got
I
your haircut? Was
I
Nancy
made
there
I
with you?
made the appointment, and they said you have to come around back. So I came around back, and I parked around back, and they opened the back screen. They looked around, and then I thought I was going to get pat down,
Oh
and then
yeah.
came in, and it was packed. It was packed in there. There was probably 20 people in there, nobody with masks, cash everywhere, just and music on. And I said, "Oh, wow, I see how you're doing this. You don't want to get shut down, so you have it all blacked out." And they said, "Yeah, we originally didn't do that, and a police officer came and told us to shut down."
Yeah.
And so we said, "Okay, we'll shut down." We immediately blocked all the vision,
Mhm.
and the police officer saw exactly what we did, and the police officer said, "Looks good to me,"
Yeah.
and
Yes.
walked away,
You
because they
know, I
didn't they
mean,
don't want to enforce the thing either, because they know you're just
that
trying to make a living.
that's right. This is the philosophical. I mean, this is what motivated me to run. The whole philosophical, you've got these shutdowns, you now have this complete lawlessness. Okay. You have law enforcement officers who
What's
are
what's lawless about it? To walk people through that.
so case and I would say it was lawless from the beginning in the sense that the governor does not have the authority, the permission, the constitutional right to do it. But on a more practical level, you have law enforcement cases turning, you know,
Yeah.
looking the other way because they don't want to enforce these laws, these edicts, these whatever, and of course that just creates a downward spiral in terms of society. I mean, this is what's so, in my opinion, so
Right.
dangerous about these kinds of mandates that we're not legislated properly. I mean, what I said early on when this happened is, and this was part of the campaign, look, if the governor wanted to declare a 30-day emergency, like, okay, I might
In
buy
other
it.
words, emergency has a meaning.
That's
It
right.
means something.
It
You
means
can't
something.
just
And
stretch it like the word marriage. You can't just stretch it to include anything you want, or
that's
man
exactly
or
right.
woman. But
Yeah.
it's like the
Well, I'm not a
word
biologist, so
they
I'm
love
not
their
sure.
words. They love stretching the meaning of words just to get what they want.
Yeah. And so what I advocate is the governor should have immediately, called a special session. Okay. If
Right.
he wanted to shut things down, if he
Deliberate
wanted
on
to
it.
change
Sure.
whatever. And
If
and
there's evidence, it could be, you could easily present that to the legislature.
absolutely. And
Sure.
that would have been the lawful way to handle this. This
Yes.
kind of goes to one of the platforms. What I was advocating for is to limit the emergency powers of the executive.
That makes
I
sense.
wanted to codify,
Yeah.
that the
Maybe.
executive could not declare an emergency for more than 30 days without calling a special session. Because if it
I
lasts
think
for
that's
30
helpful.
days, it is no longer an emergency.
Well, yeah, unless it's like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and then what's the point of having a legislature anyway? I
Right.
mean,
I mean, but now that becomes
you have
normal.
Tina
It's not an
Turner,
emergency because now that is
you have
that is
Mel
now
Gibson with
normal.
his double barrel shotgun, but that's all you have. Well, okay, let's illustrate let's articulate a philosophical issue here that people can chew on here, which is interesting. You own your own labor. You have a right to make a living. That's really what you're
Yes.
saying. The
Yes.
civil rights movement is
Mhm.
totally meaningless if the government can just arbitrarily, and I mean arbitrarily in reality, they never say it's arbitrary. They always act, the rhetoric is always that this is some legitimate exercise of power. But
Yeah.
in reality, it's capricious, it's arbitrary, and it's just usurping people's ability to make a living. Now,
Yeah.
the interesting thing about this is that this hurts the government, because the
Well,
government doesn't get
define hurts the
in
government.
California. Let me clarify. In California, if you're not working, you don't pay payroll tax.
Mhm.
There's no, that money is not coming into the government. If you're not working, you don't pay income tax.
Mhm.
That money is not, if you're not buying something, like they shut down here, my favorite used bookstore.
Yeah.
I'm like, so haircuts, you can do a black market for haircuts. I don't know
Right.
how you do a black market for used books. And these people were way too sensitive about that. The people who buy books are thoughtful people, and they're not the kind of people that will come in the back and, pay outrageous amounts of money for a Wuthering Heights or something like that. I mean, you have
Right.
Amazon can't give you a haircut. So you have this unfair targeting of local small businesses, these vintage places that are so precious to local communities, and they own their own labor. They have put everything into this,
Mhm.
like Half Off Books in Fullerton, for example, when they were shut down. Poor people.
Mhm.
They're my favorite people. They were in Whittier for a while and Greenleaf for a long time. Now they're in Fullerton. They're back, thank God. But they shut down our church, almost killed it,
Well, okay.
almost killed our church.
Now there's one that I mean, we could probably have a whole episode
Sure.
of,
Well, there you got a
infuriated.
constitutional issue there because of free religion
Uh,
in the
and
First Amendment.
and the fact, now you had a couple of pastors there in California that
Yeah,
defied, and I'm
that's right.
extremely proud. But unfortunately, here in Texas as well, way too many churches shut down, and that was another.
I don't
You know,
understand
the
that.
fact the
Why?
church
Why?
did not understand.
Yeah. Tell me why. You're there. So what are Republicans thinking there? What are they just so afraid of the virus that they thought, okay, now this fear of mine usurps your civil rights?
Right.
Is that is
I
that is that how it works?
Well, I think specifically to pastors. Okay. And now I'm a preacher's kid, so I've got a little bit of a thought.
Okay.
I mean, think about a pastor is someone who is a shepherd. Okay. By definition, this is what they are. They are people that care for their sheep. They care for their flock. This is actually a truly God-given trait that they have that makes them good pastors. So I think the downside, and this kind of comes to sometimes, the body of Christ, there's pastors, there's apostles, there's prophets, there's teachers, there's all these things. And sometimes what you have is when you have someone that is very much a shepherd, a pastor, and sensitive, okay, and they turn on the news and their congregants are scared. Their congregants are, don't want to come out, and they want to. I don't want to say coddle, because coddle implies, a negative thing, but they're wanting to make it easy on their sheep, and I think in a lot of ways that's what was going on. They felt the, whether real or not, they felt their congregants' fear. And in my opinion, they reacted to that by encouraging the fear. Okay. And so what I wish had happened, what I want to see in the body of Christ, is there needs to be, I know you follow Lance Wall now and talks about personality and
Yeah,
disc and these types of things.
we had Lance on the podcast last month.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we didn't see is, by personality and design, they are not confrontational people by majority. Okay.
Right.
And so then you take on, okay, now, am I going to lose my my 501c3. I mean, the
Yeah.
risks that I have.
Sure.
And so in a very real sense, like, what's the risk benefit to me shutting down versus giving, hey, I can just go online, we got this online. And unfortunately, we don't have enough pastors that really understand that, when the Bible says assemble together, I mean, that is what it means. And I love online. I love Zoom. It has a place, but it's not in person.
There were far too many people that were comfortable. They were just happy to do that. And in fact, it wouldn't have taken a pandemic to do it for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd be like half the time they wouldn't mind doing that anyway.
Right. I mean,
so
look,
you got
I work from home and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you got the excuse of the pandemic. Then you don't have the it's a little bit odd, but there is a violation of civil rights. It's just as egregious as some of the worst things you've seen in on the face of it in American history in terms of just the violation itself. It is a violation. A violation is a violation of your rights.
Let me. I want to say one thing. You've triggered something in my mind about this civil rights and
there's a prophetic impulse in the Bible that is confrontational.
And here's the other thing.
It's hard to fit that with the Sermon on the Mount, be peacemakers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, going to your comfort, being online, being on Zoom, having Zoom. Here's the philosophical, spiritual question: is the purpose of the church? Is the primary purpose of the church to teach, to instruct, to preach? If that's the primary purpose, then you can do that online. You can do that on Zoom. If the primary purpose of the church is to create a community that empowers and equips the saints, that's you can't do that online. And so, I think that's what you have is, if you're a preacher and that's what you view as your primary purpose, it's pretty easy to do an online church. Yeah. And again, I'm trying not to be overly critical, but it does irritate me. I do think that bluntly, I think the church failed in its response. And I think that, now we're looking at some of the consequences of the policy, whether that's, people unemployed and businesses shut down. We're now seeing, the vaccine and, not to get your podcast deplatformed, but I think that we are seeing very real health effects from the vaccine that people that, were not truly at risk from the disease ended up taking on additional risk by taking a vaccine. And this all could have been stopped if someone had put some brakes to this early on, and the church was poised to put those brakes on it.
The fact that you had to kind of talk around that says a lot right there. I mean, which political party is for censorship?
Well, and as Elon Musk says, he used to be a Democrat.
Well, I'm used to being censored on the campus.
Yeah.
I'm also used to not being censored on the campus. And I see what happens when I'm not censored. Mm-hmm. There's an attempt to censor you. Mm-hmm. And there's an attempt by whatever means when the message is not well received. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that I believe that people have rights. And what does that mean to have rights? Like, for example, firearms. Mm-hmm. It means I don't have to ask the government for permission.
Yeah.
That's what it means. I mean, mm-hmm. if I have a right to invite somebody over to my home, I don't have to ask the government for permission. Right. So that's what I mean by, I mean, I could make distinctions about rights. Some rights are conditional. Like you might say to your teenager, you can have people over until 10.
Right.
And then they have a right now which can be revoked by you to have
because
people
they're not autonomous. They're not.
And then 10 a.m. they're out of here.
Yeah.
Only early morning socializing here. But, I thought that was funny. People thought I meant 10 p.m. But it's like with earning a living, occupational licensure, these kind of regimes that put in place the permission stuff.
Right.
I run into it with teaching. So weird. I've taught
Well,
in high
look what's
schools.
going on in teaching and in the
Yeah,
higher
yeah, sure.
education is
Tell me.
the whole accreditation. I mean,
Yeah.
why?
Well, that's actually not the government, but yeah,
Well, but it's not well,
it's
I
peer
would make
review.
an
Yeah.
argument that in many ways the education is an outgrowth of government. The point
Well,
is this whole accreditation process.
If you
What's
mean the
purpose of it?
credential, yeah, the
Yeah.
credentialing. So I've teach college, and I've taught high school on high school campuses. College courses did not need a credential for that.
Yes.
But if I was to teach high school, they said I have to get an additional credential. I have 7 degrees. I have a PhD, and
Right.
I have 7 degrees. You know, you have to get an addition. You have to understand how to teach.
Yeah.
So it's just I can't imagine what it takes for people to earn a living, and they have to get all this permission. And everybody that's ever gotten a teaching credential knows it's just a bunch of propaganda and a bunch of, wasted money and stupid.
Absolutely. Well, going back to your hair,
Anyway.
that your barber there. I mean, the fact that she has to get some sort of cosmetologist permit to cut your hair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
She's
just
got all this stuff
that's
on
silly.
the wall that says I have
You have permission.
I know how to clean the scissors.
Yeah.
And I'm not making fun. I'm just saying come on, guys. I mean, where do you stop here? I mean, I'm not credentialed at all as far as a teaching credential for college.
Mhm.
Like, that's the ironic thing is it's just, you just get a degree, you learn the stuff, and then you figure out how to teach it. And,
Right.
and they act like, 17-year-olds are a vast difference from 17-year-olds in college. No,
Yeah.
it's same. It's same. They don't want to do their
And of
homework.
course,
They
it's
don't want to
clear
do the
that
reading.
we're doing such a great job with our educational system. I mean,
know.
let's continue because we're obviously doing such a fantastic job with people that can think and can be creative and are productive members of society. So we need to really double down on whatever it is that we're doing because we're doing such a fantastic job at it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I wish we had more time. Would you mind coming back on and talking more about
I would
this
love
stuff?
to. I would love to.
Let's do a part 2. Maybe we can get you back on in June if
I'd
your
love to.
schedule permits.
So I did not win my election. If that was not clear, I did not come out the winner. So I do have an open calendar. But in all seriousness, I do want to just kind of say one thing and make sure they get it in because
Sure.
I was thinking about like the lesson, what did I learn through this process? And here is one thing that I want to make sure. I learned that it absolutely is worth it. So these things that we've talked about, rights and whether it's freedom and security and prosperity, these things, but one of the things that I absolutely did learn, and I would encourage your viewers and your listeners that may think about running, is it our country and our states are worth saving. As a Christian, I frankly believe we have a responsibility to do it. I believe that it's my duty to do it. So if there's anything that I learned, it is worth it to seek higher office, to run for a higher office. Win, lose, or draw, you move the needle in the conversation.
That definitely comes across crystal clear as far as your desire and heart for education with your newspaper approach. I love that approach. I think that it's hard to get in there with that approach in the short run, but I have a feeling that in the long run, it's stuff like that really ultimately matters.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. Let's talk more about it. I look forward to having you back on. Thanks, Jonathan.
Well, hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely.